Thank you for this excellent question, Danilo. And as always, you touch on the core issues we are all dealing with in the world of cooperatives. Allow me to first start by thanking Graciela and you for inviting me to share my thoughts on the cooperative identity. For me, it's always a great pleasure and privilege to engage with the cooperatives of the Americas. Last year, it was an online meeting as necessitated by the global pandemic, and even earlier this year. For the summit, I would have loved to be in Asunción in Paraguay, but I have not managed due to family reasons, and I apologize for that. So I salute Ariel, Graciela, and all the inspiring cooperatives of the Americas who have provided many insights for us, cooperative advocates and promoters in international organizations. And I would like to actually reflect on this point of the region providing so many inspirations to us in international organizations and around the world. I have headed the cooperatives unit of the International Labour Organization for the last 10 years. So it was the United Nations International Year of Cooperatives when I took on the leadership of this portfolio on cooperatives and the wider social and solidarity economy. I remember at that time, 10 years ago, the dynamic was about reawakening of the world to the relevance of the cooperative values and principles. This happened in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and cooperative researchers documented this very well, how cooperatives and mutuals shielded their members and users from undue risks. As this rediscovery of the cooperative model was taking place, the momentum around the discovery and a growing enthusiasm around the wider social and solidarity economy was also taking place as a related and a parallel trend. For me, from those days on, it was very clear that cooperatives were a key building block for the social and solidarity economy. And I do not mean this only in the sense that cooperatives are one of the organizational forms under the social and solidarity economy. No, I was always convinced that what makes cooperatives unique as an organizational form is in the cooperative identity, its values and principles. So when I engaged with the social and solidarity economy, I built my approach on values and principles driving it. How are they similar and different from those of cooperatives? And I think this continues to be an important research area for cooperative researchers to look into. And toward this end, what we have done is to follow closely the social and solidarity economy laws, policies, and acts that have been adopted around the world, because oftentimes these were adopted through national consultations and reflected the perspectives of the cooperative movement. Needless to say, the Americas, along with Europe, are leading on this policy front, followed closely by Africa. The Americas have a social and solidarity economy policies that include cooperatives, fair trade, ethical consumption, informal economy, and indigenous peoples associations, social finance associations, and other community-based initiatives like quilombos that have had prominence in the region across decades. Here, I would like to acknowledge the long tradition of indigenous peoples of the Americas in living in harmony with nature, flora and fauna alike, and the reciprocity and solidarity principles that they live by with others. The Buen Vivir or Vivir Bien philosophy of the indigenous peoples of the Andean and the Amazonian regions resonates with the community-based cooperation among indigenous communities of North America and around the world. And I think this value and principle-based approach of the indigenous communities can guide the cooperative movement of the Americas in moving forward. It's not about so much changing identity, but more about a shift in attitude and a carefully thought out and systemic opening to others who share similar values and principles. In fact, when we were preparing for the discussion, the general discussion on decent work and the social and solidarity economy at the 110th International Labor Conference on that took place in June 2022, we made a thorough analysis of what's contained in the social and solidarity economic policies and legislation, and found this strong emphasis, this thread of values and principles. The international definition of the social and solidarity economy that was adopted by the tripartite constituents of the International Labour Organization was also welcomed by the cooperative movement, and it includes principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, democratic and participatory governance, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in the distribution and use of surpluses and profits, as well as assets. The definition also included the values of care for people and planet, equality and fairness, interdependence, self-governance, transparency and accountability, and the attainment of decent work and livelihoods. I would now like to go back to why I say a careful opening or a prudent overture is needed from the cooperative movement to the larger social and solidarity economy movement as it relates to the values and principles. I start by reflecting on the opening aspect. Many of the other institutional forms under the social and solidarity economy that are based on similar values and principles have in fact developed in contexts where the cooperative laws and policies were not up to date or not so inclusive. So communities in these contexts who wanted to pursue these values and principles used other forms like associations, foundations, or social enterprises. In such contexts, cooperative legislation and policies need to be updated and become more inclusive. Cooperative movements in these settings can advocate for such reform, including in partnership with international institutions like the International Labour Organization, but also based on the knowledge of cooperative law experts. And such partnerships can be activated to support the development of a new generation of cooperative or law experts. The world needs that. In some other contexts, the misuse of the cooperative model has created an aversion to the mention of this institutional form, but not an aversion to its values and principles. So those values and principles found a way to flourish in other institutional forms that fall under the social and solidarity economy. Such pseudo-cooperative practices have been a concern for the legitimate cooperative movements around the world, including in the Americas. And this is why I use the words careful, cautious, or prudent opening for when I reflect on a change in attitude. For such context, cooperative movements, of course, needs to engage and will engage with the local and national institutions responsible for registration, inspection, and auditing in a systematic way. This is in order to put safeguards in place against dilution and co-optation of the cooperative values and principles. I know that there have been such efforts by the cooperative movements of the Americas. These practices in preventing pseudo-cooperative practices will need to be well documented for others in the region and around the world to benefit from them. In the ILO, we've received requests from trade union movements of this region and elsewhere to pay close attention to such pseudo-cooperative practices that may be violating workers' rights. In fact, such pseudo practices may be developing in the wider social and solidarity economy. Therefore, the social and solidarity economy movements can learn from the cooperative movement experience in how to identify and eliminate such practices. I think the Americas is probably much closer to making such a careful opening, because there's been a long-lasting dialogue between cooperative and wider social and solidarity economy movements in the region. You have recognized the need to protect the model from dilution and co-optation on the one hand, but also the need to reach out to like-minded institutions. I see that the young cooperators of the Americas are getting ready to ask their questions to Martin Lowry. And I want to say a few words about that. Every generation comes up with different solutions to its own needs in different sectors and ways. For instance, the development of cooperatives in the social and care services has come about in the last 40, 50 years with rapidly aging populations and the wide recognition of childcare needs for women workers to be able to fulfill their potential in engaging fully, actively in the world of work. Similarly, the use of community-owned renewable energy through cooperatives is a recent phenomenon of the last 2 decades. The indigenous people of the Americas and the world knew and practiced the need to live in harmony with nature. The wider world is learning it only now. And in the digital economy, the use of the cooperative model is even more recent, going back a decade or so. And as the world is changing, the way the new generations engage with the world is also changing. They are rediscovering cooperative values and principles. They are also engaging with it and interpreting it. The cooperative movement has a critical role to play in showing to the new generations how their own experiences worked, what didn't work. They may want to also share these experiences in humility without imposing them. They may want to be curious and ask questions of the young people as to what it is they want to use the cooperative form and how they imagine that form can benefit them. This is, of course, about cooperative education. Once again, alliances can be useful with government institutions, international organizations, and the wider social and solidarity economy. The values and principles and their practical manifestations have to be transmitted through means that young people can pick up through videos, video games, different social media platforms using digital learning methods. And I think these digital means have gone through a major expansion, and they are much more accessible now. Accelerated by the global pandemic and its pressures, the cooperative movement can make use of them in bigger and better ways. The cooperative and wider social and solidarity economy movements can also collaborate on this education front. I mentioned this as the cooperative movements can seize the enthusiasm around the social and solidarity economy to show that with their values and principles, they are ready to engage and take part and at times lead. I say at times lead and not lead all the time, because different local national contexts may need the cooperative movement to play different roles. It may be necessary to come to the table with some flexibility. The role they may play could be different in different realms, whether this is research or statistics or legislation or education or inspection, depending on their unique comparative advantages in each context. So I see a two-pronged approach moving forward. First is for the co-op movement to open up, to reach out to younger generations and to the wider social and solidarity economy, following values and principles closely. And then the second is for the co-op movement to be vigilant about protecting its identity through cooperative policy reform, education, audits, inspections against pseudo practices. I think the Americas has a great deal to share with the world, and this is about the collaborations between the two movements. These need to be documented to inspire younger generations, other regions, and the ILO resolution on decent work and the social and solidarity economy that has strong also basis references to cooperatives will have a 7-year strategy and action plan. This will be presented on November 9th to the governing body of the ILO. So once it's adopted, we look forward to our collaboration with you in advancing that strategy and action plan. And there are also regional manifestations around SSE policies, like the European Union has an action plan around the social and solidarity economy that was adopted last year. A similar 10-year strategy to activate the role of the social and solidarity economy and to advance sustainable development is being discussed by the African Union. Last month, they had civil society consultations. Cooperative ICA Africa was there. Next week, there will be government consultations. If the Americas region and the regional organizations to move forward with a regional strategy on social and solidarity economy, it will be critical that the cooperatives of the Americas are actively engaged in the development of such a strategy at the regional level. I say continuing onwards with the cooperative values and principles is the way to go. And I pass the word back to you, Danilo. Thank you.